want to welcome Jag Prakasam to our program, The Disruptors Unplugged, in sunny Las Vegas. But before we get started, Jag, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thanks for coming here. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot, Bruce. Thanks for having me over. I'm having a good time in Las Vegas. It's always more energizing with you in it. So I'm happy to be here.
I have to admit I'm a little tired from festivities yesterday, but I'm kind of getting through it. Jag, let's let's just kind of go right into it right away. I remember meeting you about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, and you were just kind of in the formation of QDC AI. And I was kind of particularly fascinated because first, for the audience's sake, I kind of wanted you to talk about, where you came from, how you came up with this idea, what the purpose of this company is, and how you're guiding this business. So with that, welcome.
Oh, I'd love to give you a background from where I started out. I'm originally a chemical engineer, and I actually developed neural nets to run heat exchangers. And this is going back 20 plus years. We published a lot of research on that. And then I made the switch to finance because it had a lot of data to play with. That fascinated me. And throughout this time, over the past 20 years, as part of a quant hedge fund, I was the second CEO and CIO of the firm. I built AI and ML teams inside the hedge fund to run institutional capital. And a lot of what we did there sort of was around what we are using as the genesis for what we are doing in QDC. And QDC AI was formed from that idea pool. A lot of the team came over in July of 2022. And a lot of the things that in the hedge fund world that we could never write about or file a patent for or write a white paper for, it was a little more liberating. We were able to file patents on our technology, which we were awarded this year. And I think when you met us, we were in that early phase of trying to productize the IP that we had created from our hedge fund days. And that's when I think you and I met.
So for the audience's sake, what is QDC AI? And who do you focus on?
It's an AI microservices architecture that essentially becomes a force multiplier for wealth advisors. So we are focused on the wealth world. It's a purpose-built AI framework specifically for the wealth world. It's not a large horizontal platform or anything that can also work in other spaces. We are very, very focused on the wealth world.
How many employees do you have right now?
We have 10 employees, and their core research and more on the AI development.
Are they mostly engineers?
Mostly engineers.
Because, when you read in the papers these days, engineers are like athletes now. You're hearing all these engineers getting paid a lot of money. Was there ever any temptation of losing or fear of losing any of these engineers to the hot competition? Or
it's almost, I think partly as we build for the wealth world, trust is such an important part of it. And majority of the team came with me from the hedge fund. They've known me for a long time. Like my CTO has known me for 20 years. He's known me longer than I know my wife. and my CPO and all of them, we work together in different aspects. And I think that is transferred over. And we are building something big. And they're part of focused on the mission more than thinking whether someone else will pay me maybe 20% more or something like that.
What does QDC solve for the wealth advisor?
It really, what it does is it takes away all of the day-to-day tasks that a wealth advisor needs to do. It's critical, it's important, it's probably required by the auditors. But what we do is we help them build a better human connection with their client pool while we do a lot of the work. Take, for example, writing a portfolio commentary today. You have an active portfolio in each of your clients. They are very different. One client can be very different than the other. So we would help write a hyper-personalized, a report for the wealth advisor, which is phenomenal. In the past, for them to write a hyper-personalized wealth report for each of their clients would have taken them, I don't know, a couple of days, maybe a week. And imagine if you had 100, 200, 300, 400 clients, it's a lot. But today, it doesn't matter to us if you have one client or a million clients.
Well, when I reflect upon, my experience at the banks when I was an advisor at the banks and then today as an independent, one of the things that kind of caught me off guard was that although being independent is fantastic, really enjoy it, so on and so forth, there is a certain convenience level of being able to go on the fifth floor, talk to analysts, go on the seventh floor, talk to investment bankers, go to the ninth floor, talk to capital markets. And when you're on your own, you don't have that ability. Do you find yourself or your company more focused on the independent community or on the bank community?
Actually, we have democratized the tech, and the independent advisors are the ones who are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this. We are taking 5-person teams and making them into 50-person powerhouses. So now the edge that larger banks had with the analysts and how you described it, you had that comfort level uh, is gone. You can see the latest earnings on Salesforce. They're talking about dropping a lot of their workforce in preference for AI. So there's a reason for it. Even they can't defend their moat. So, previously large companies, you could only do a certain, types of things if you had the bank balance to go drive that, right? But today, large companies are really worried. If you think about it, they're making all-time highs in the stock market. Their earnings are going up, but they're making massive layoffs. You know why? Because now that moat that they had with the number of employees and the number of talent that they had to put behind anything is gone, because now a small company can come in there, a 10-person company can disrupt, billions of dollars of revenue. And that's what we're seeing with this.
Yeah, I've often called it my digital army. I
I
don't
like
have
that
I don't
term.
I don't have 1,000 people working for me, but I
Right.
have my digital agents out there, helping me arrive at the outcomes that I'm kind of looking for. So when did you start the company?
We started it in July of 2022. That's when we spun out, formed QDEC, and then filed for the patents and everything on the technology.
Was it hard to raise money? Because 2022 was kind of tough.
Yes, yes, it is. It is hard. It was hard to raise money, and primarily also because the wealth world is, when you're creating a solution for the wealth world, unlike creating a solution for sales or lead gen or marketing. The challenge is the wealth world itself was a little AI shy. They weren't sure if this was real or this would take off or not.
But I'm assuming that mentality has now quickly changed in the last 6 to 12 months.
Quite dramatically.
Yeah.
So all of the clients that we've been talking, enterprise clients as well, uh, are curious. We're curious. Would talk to us all the time, get an update from us last year, but not really move. But this year, all of a sudden, every C-suite has given their teams a mandate to go adopt the right framework.
So
Right.
what are your platforms? What are primarily advisors in the wealth business looking for from you? Now, I know why I called on you and I can explain that later,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of curious in the field that you're talking to, what kind of things are they asking?
See, the biggest thing in the wealth world is the trust that they hold with their clients. Okay. So
But
when
that would create some skepticism on AI
that's
in the
correct.
fear that it would replace them.
It would replace them or maybe make an error that they can recover from. And those are all real fears. And I'm not, you know, but the point here is what they want from us is the complete, the solution that they can rely on. And this is one of the things that QDEC does really well, where we provide the ultimate audit trail in the industry. No one else does it. No other solution in the fiduciary world does it. We provide the ultimate audit trail. So what do I mean by
Yeah,
that?
what do you mean by that?
So let's take, for example, an advisor comes in there and says, okay, give me a deep research report that marries the macro environment that we are in, which, as we know, this year changes quite fast, quite dramatically, and also related to my client's portfolio. Right now, that something like that, we will go and look at millions of sources as well as private docs, and then contextualize it for that particular client. And for every single claim that we make, whatever we write, we give you a completely auditable, transparent sort of citation that you can go and verify if it's true. Right? The biggest risk if you see today with just using a large language model or just there are a lot of solutions out there which would put a wrapper on it. They have a phenomenal UI in the front, but the back end is just a wrapper on ChatGPT. But it hallucinates a lot, right? But this is where the core of our technology comes in there and says, no, we reduce that risk to nil. So that's where we excel. And that's why they're beginning to see the differentials. They're beginning to see, they're running us side by side and saying, that makes a lot of sense. You guys are actually making sure that this is real data, this is licensed data, this is a verified source. You even tell us exactly what we read. So think about it, Bruce. If you and I wanted to make a talk in some conference, we put together 6 slides. And the 6th slide is probably a few references about what kind of articles we read to put together this talk. But QDEC goes a step further. It actually tells you what claim we read. Because a viewer, if they were to look at that and say, hey, what did I do here? They can't figure out, even if we put it together as humans, as to what really we read to come up with this conclusion. But we actually give you that level of audit trail. And that's why we have, you know, chief compliance officers of the top 40 independent RIAs invested in us, because they were like, I can believe in that solution because that will be something I can rely on.
So in the due diligence process, you're saying the AI tool is highly accretive to the advisor.
Yes.
And they're using it in portfolios, advice, everything?
Yes. So in portfolios, a lot of what they also do is also, so we have 2 sets of reports on this side, right? That outcomes that we create for them. One is for that they can share with the client, which explains the performance, the factors, what's happening in the market, and why did their portfolio perform the way they did. The other side of it is telling the advisor insights. Hey, this is the sentiment of your holdings right now. These are alternatives that you could use that are doing better. But this is more to enable, it's giving a research digital army for the advisor. It's not for the client, but it's for the advisor to go through it, think about it, and say, hey, maybe I should take up some of these ideas.
I'm kind of laughing inside because I've often wondered, like a BlackRock, as big as they are.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on them per se, any large money management firm or whatever.
Yeah.
At what point do they not need the advisor when they could use a QDEC AI and just say, hey, here's your data set. If you had used all these inputs on the portfolios that we suggested, this is what your performance would have been.
Yeah.
I think that creates a problem actually for the advisor.
It does. Well, the advisor has to work harder within BlackRock.
Well, it's fact
even.
checking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can't just make up a bunch of, BS and then expect, the client to respond to it. So I think what it does, at least the way I look at your company, is what it does, it titrates or synthesizes a lot of information and puts it in a very simple format. I feel that that's to be a lot of value to the end user and as well as to the advisor, because they can get quicker to the punch. I mean, I'll tell you a frustration in my day job where I am an advisor. We're always running out of time. So invariably what ends up happening is you service like the top 20 or 30% of your clients super, super well because they have more needs, more money. The client who's a smaller client in assets under management is just as equally as important. But getting to that person equally at the same time is very, very difficult. So I found your services in that regard very helpful because when we get a piece of information, what's the Fed doing, or, what is the current GDP outlook, or why are oil prices crashing, or why did Bitcoin and gold surge, we get immediate responses from QDEC. And I found it to be actually very friendly on the eyes because you guys also change the font colors and things like that. So marketing does play into it to a certain degree to kind of eliminate some of that fear factor.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something you guys spent a lot of time on, or are you just so engineering focused you didn't care about the marketing?
No, you know what? Actually, AI is in its early innings, to be honest, in the wealth world.
So you don't think we're in a bust phase? You think?
No, not in the wealth world. Definitely not in the wealth world.
And why do you think they're last?
They tend to be a lot more conservative in terms of adopting a technology because, sure, they're fiduciary business. they're always almost much later in the game of adopting any technology for that matter. Even SaaS, or when it came out, it took them 10 years to really get into it. Even CRMs, today CRMs are, even today they're, I went to a conference recently and they're still pitching themselves as, hey, this is this great technology that advisors should use, which is kind of odd because it's been there for like 25 years, 25 plus years, right? But what I found uh, in this phase is that sometimes clients tell us how they want to use the technology. We have a certain vision of, hey, here are ways you can really break out, but they say that's great, but my business, this is how I run my business and this is where I want to use it. Can I use it? And that was one of the ways. It was an eye opener in the way you used it. When your team used our technology, to be honest, it was a phenomenal use case, because what you said essentially in my mind is that you said, let me meet my client where they are. I don't, I don't want. Um, Previously, what was the typical modus operandi in the wealth world is you send a newsletter every month or something like that, and you put a set of topics that you hope that your clients are interested in, and then maybe 5% of them respond back saying, hey, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? Right. But um, it was a very like a flyer notice board kind of approach to this, right? But then you figured out a way to actually take this technology and hyper personalize it to the client and in real time, because that's something we do really well, consume real time news. And you said, I'm going to be extremely topical. I'm going to meet my client where they are, what's happening in the markets today, any big event, I'm going to talk to them right away. And that was, for us, it was a eye opener in the way
I
you
think
used it.
I think something that kind of needs to be discussed, and I'd love to hear your input on this, is that there's a big systemic shift that's going on in the wealth business right now. So in the next 30 years, something like $100 trillion is going to be transferred to the next generation.
Yep.
Okay. And the average advisor is over 55 years old,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range. But then when you take a look at the headwind and say that the clients, kids, only a minority, 15%, don't quote me, but it's in the lower territory, are going to use their current advisor.
Yeah.
So these advisors, knowing that they're on the crest of their, at the end of their career, don't want to adopt these new technologies. My argument would be, if you don't, you won't be existing in the next
Absolutely.
10 years. And that's why I also think you're starting to see record levels of roll-ups and so on and so forth, because the advisor knows there's a shelf life to their client.
Yeah.
And so in order to stay independent, you have to kind of reinvent yourself. And I have to believe that AI kind of fits into that picture for a younger generation, or you're just kind of, quote, for lack of better words, not with it.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
No, it's an extremely fair statement, because what happens is, think about it, like that younger generation it's inheriting all this wealth. You're right, it's about $100 trillion in the next 30 years. It's 10 trillion in this decade. And what's happening is, this is the generation that, if you look at adoption rates, Netflix took 3.5 years to hit 1 million users, right? ChatGPT took 5 days.
It's amazing.
So that's the generation. They already have it. It's already become table stakes for advisors to have AI in their practice. So the advisor that doesn't use it is going to be left behind. Their margins are going to be much lower. So the valuations of their businesses as well may not be that well. They might still hold the trust with the generation that currently has those assets, but that's going to be short-lived, and that's the challenge they're going to face. But we can see that advisors are waking up to this, whether they like it or not. They gotta move into that realm and adopt the technology.
So one of the challenges I see, in the technology world, when guys like you come and, a bunch of engineers, super smart guys, blah, 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 blah. One of the things that I see a lot is you have a specific vertical that you are examining, that you want to solve for.
Yeah.
And a lot of the fintech guys out there go out there and say, okay, this particular vertical we're going to solve. Does QDC AI act as kind of a flywheel to all these things, because of you're saying due diligence and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
Fiduciary, those are big words. I mean, how are you incorporating, are you talking to other, quote, partners in the business?
Yeah, we not only work with advisors, but we are actually, a lot of our adoption has happened by other wealth tech platforms addressing different verticals.
Correct. And so to communicate all on one flywheel,
Yes.
because I think for the advisor or the end user, they don't want to be clicking into, 10 different things. They want to be able to go into one area, get the information they need from all areas, and then get out.
Right.
Because speed is the key.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because in our market research, when we were, putting together QDEC, we found that on an average, an advisor used 8 to 9 software solutions. They were
Correct.
all point solutions. The data sat in all these different solutions and never talked to each other. And they did not want to learn one more point solution. And there are a lot of AI startups trying to spin up really quick and create another point solution. And the challenge with that is there's going to be a lot of churn with that, because you're right. Ultimately, the advisor wants a single pane of glass where they're interacting with their
Super
data.
easy. Just make it easy.
Yeah. That way they can spend more time with their client rather than figuring out how to move data from one software to the other.
For the entrepreneurs out there who are thinking of running their own business and starting it, what advice would you give them in terms of some of the things that you went through that could be helpful? I mean, everyone talks about the startups. Everyone's talking about AI. It seems like every day there's a billionaire being created. I mean, at some point, like, where's my money? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it just seems astronomical. But as you went into this venture, we touched upon a little bit about, raising money and kind of what a pain that was. What are some of the other pressure points that you could give entrepreneurs out there when you're starting a business and helping them guide, literally starting a business, raising money, and then kind of going from there?
Yeah. A big part that I think we struggled with is identifying the right way to distribute this technology, reach the client, a good, head of sales, revenue leaders, because the technology is so new, especially if you're doing an AI startup. If you're doing any other startup, that you probably have a suite of, people who have a track record you can rely on or bring them on board. But with AI, a lot of them are figuring it out. The engineers are figuring it out. They're figuring out their clients. The clients are trying to understand how to use it, and they see value, but they're also seeing, how do I use it for better outcomes for
But
themselves.
it also seems like the AI is learning as it's going along.
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever you learned yesterday is compounding at such a rate that how do you know that information from just 6 months ago isn't obsolete? And how do you keep up with that?
Yeah, so that's the part that to actually,
Because personally, I get anxiety over it. You know what I mean? I mean, if you think about Elon Musk said the other day that in the next 4 years, AI will be collectively more intelligent than all humans combined. And that's pretty screwed up stuff.
you see, that's, I would say, that I hope the world goes in the way that will actually take that to scale up, right? All of the technologies today that exist, anything, any invention, if you think about it, it was always here. It didn't come from outer space or something like that. It was always here. It was a question of how quickly we could build on.
Well, Dartmouth, 1954. That's when the formula. I mean, it's AI has been around forever.
Exactly. So the point I'm making is, hopefully we actually accelerate our inventions and growth and where we are. We compress maybe 500 years within 10 years of invention, right? And that would be the dream, right? I'm not worried about AGI or the taking away people's jobs, and people have dystopian viewpoints about AI, but I'm actually on the other end. Internet came, and what happened? The economy boomed. Mobile phones came, or computers came. Whatever it might
But
be.
it did change the way people. I mean, look, they said that the automobile was the destruction of the little town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because people could travel
Now
everywhere.
travel, yeah.
Right. Walmart was the destruction of small stores everywhere.
Yes.
The cell phone was the destruction of landlines.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that AI is going to destroy things necessarily, but if you're not engaged with it, I just don't see how you survive.
Now that's going to say that those structural changes will happen. Definitely. I mean, you saw a generation when email came out, a generation that never used computers, learning to use computers and browsers and having an email account and sending an email out. So you're going to see that teething trouble. There is going to be that teething trouble. But I feel AI is friendlier. When you look at even a smartphone, when initially you got a smartphone, it takes some time to sort of figure it, figure out how to use it. The original days, but Google was a single bar, and even a kid could go in there. I remember my daughter when she, got on my laptop. She was 5 years old or something, and she actually asked a decent question on that Google search bar, right? And I think AI is going to be. You're going to have these solutions which are going to be that friendly. You don't need a user manual to kind of understand it, and that should help. But sure, there's going to be a structural change in terms of the businesses. There are going to be some businesses taken out. If I was a consulting company, I would be a little bit worried about it.
I think if I was an attorney, I'd be a little worried
Yeah.
about it. I think, the old saying, two attorneys, three opinions. But with AI, I think you're going to eliminate a lot of the back and forth and probably establish some probabilistic modeling
Yeah.
on what the outcomes might be, and then allowing the individuals to say, "Hey, I'm going to either fight this or not based upon the statistics that have been given to me."
Yeah.
Do you ever worry about cybersecurity? I mean, that's the
Yes.
number one thing. So clients,
Yeah.
the reason why they have advisors and the personal touch and so on and so forth, at least they always say, because I trust them.
Yeah.
Okay. I trust her, whatever the case may be. AI somewhat threatens that a little bit
Yeah.
in that it feels invasive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? How do you control that messaging?
You see, in terms of the trust is a big
It's
component.
huge. It's number
right?
one.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I don't think the fiduciary should worry about being replaced. But I think the fiduciary should focus on how to use AI to provide better outcomes to all of their clients, right? I mean, I think that's where the game is. I think trust is always going to be a factor. You need one incident to happen, and then suddenly everybody points to that. There's a sense of like uncomfortableness. But all of this happens in the cloud, right? Like now, security starts from there because all of these solutions are in the cloud. We saw Oracle's earnings come out. It was phenomenal, and because they expected to grow at a massive rate on just infrastructure plays. If you think about it, I
I
mean,
mean, if you just take one step back, because I have to talk about this.
yeah,
What blows my mind is I've never seen that type of growth ever in my life. From what they say, from 14 billion to 144 billion.
correct.
And how did the street miss all that? And
Yeah.
if they missed it on the infrastructure call,
Yeah.
and that's the rate of growth, what's that look like?
Yeah. And we're going to see that's just on the infrastructure, right? Imagine the applications that are going to be built on that. They're planning for those applications that will be built.
Is it possible that advisory firms could be just 2 or 3 people with a digital army as opposed to 20, 30, 40 people?
I think 2 or 3 people would do the job of 30 people, 10x, right? I think it's a force multiplier. They could increase their pie, manage more assets, increase, I think that's where it's going. Actually, it's a good thing in a sense that now they can compete and boost their margins, to be honest, per advisor.
Jag, last question. Where do you want to take QDEC? I mean, is this something where you feel that is a niche idea, or is this something where you feel like, hey, there's aspirations to go public someday? How big do you think your company could become?
I think going public is going to be an interesting, whole different process. For now, I think it's an aspirational goal. You might call me a little bit cocky, but an aspirational goal, nevertheless, is no matter what platform you use, we power them all. Is how I want to kind of use QDEC as. I want us to be the Intel Inside model for wealth, right? This technology is large enough that it can be licensed to other verticals, but I would let someone else who's more competent do it. But for me, it's going to be wealth and use it as an Intel Inside model.
Well, Jag, I want to thank you for coming all the way over here to kind of share some of your thoughts on what AI is doing. A lot of people are talking about it right now. And from my perspective, you've given me some real insight. So thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot for having me, Bruce.